Okay, you're on.
Lovely. Right, hi everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of Children, Young People and Skills Scrutiny Review Board. So I'd like to pop round to the beginning just to do a quick introduction. There's quite a few of us today as well, so I do like to do that. So I'm Councillor Trella, Councillor for Oakwood Ward and Chair of the committee.
I'm Councillor Stephen Falk from Ulverston South, Vice Chair of the committee.
I'm Councillor John Wright from Chaddiston East. I'm not a member of this committee, but a member of the Executive Scrutiny Board.
Don't you have enough to do? I'm Councillor Cecilia Wright, Councillor Burlington.
Councillor Emily Lonsdale, Councillor for Little Ward.
I'm Saki Bamina, Councillor for Blakery's Ward.
I'm Sarah Walker, I'm Programme Manager for Families First Partnership.
Hello, I'm Sue Anlin, I'm the Director of Early Life Insurance.
Hello, I'm the Venerable Matthew Trick, I'm the Archdeacon of Derby.
I'm Tracy Churchill, Catholic Education Representative.
I'm Andrew Kaiser, I'm Head of Special Services.
I'm Councillor Matthew Eyre, I'm a member for Oakwood Ward.
Councillor Richard Hudson, Councillor for Chadston North.
I'm Miriam Riaz, the Deputy Youth Mayor.
I'm Omar Azam, former Youth Mayor and Politics and IR student here on Work Experience.
Lindsay Stevens, I'm a Democratic Services Officer at the meeting.
Thank you. So yeah, just to note that we do have two observers this evening. So as Councillor Wright, so he's joined the meeting at my invitation tonight, just as an observer. So he's not a member of the CYP Scrutiny Board, but would like to contribute to the discussions on the Youth Justice Plan this evening. So I will invite him to ask questions when the item is discussed. He will not be able to make or vote for any recommendations either. We've also got Omar over here, so former Youth Mayor for Derby, who is on work experience with Democratic Services. So let's go straight to our agenda. So apologies, please, Lindsay.
Councillor Ashby, Sharon Buckby, Andy Smith, India Joe.
Thank you. Item 2, there are no late items to be introduced. Any declarations of interest from anybody?
Yes, Chair, I'll declare between October 21 and May 23, I was Cabinet Member for Community Development, Place and Tourism, which included community safety. A number of parts of the Youth Justice Plan touch on some things that happened during my tenure as Cabinet Member, but I don't think any of them preclude me from being part of scrutinising the report.
Thank you. So minutes from last meeting. So is everyone happy to be in agreement that the minutes of the last meeting are true and correct record?
Yeah.
Perfect. So then let's move on to our Youth Justice Plan. So we've got Andrew in attendance to present. So the first report is about the Youth Justice Plan. So we've been asked by the Council Cabinet to consider the Youth Justice Plan prior to approval by the full Council. So we've got the report and associated appendices regarding the Derby City Youth Justice Plan, and they're all attached to Appendix 1. So at the meeting on the 10th of September 25, the Council Cabinet had recommended that CYP Board should undertake a 4-week consultation from the 15th of September 25 to the 6th of October 25, and if changes were proposed to the attached report, then these should be considered by Council Cabinet prior to submission of the plan. If there were no changes to the report and associated appendices, we should proceed then to Council for approval. So I'll pass over to you, Andrew, if you want to talk us through.
Sure. So yeah, this is part of the process of approval for the annual Youth Justice Plan, and section 1 in the report tells you about the statutory basis for youth justice services, known in the statute as youth offending services, but also in terms of the submission of an annual statutory plan that the Youth Justice Board stipulate as part of the conditions of granting youth justice services. So I won't dwell in terms of section 1 of the report, because that just gives statutory background for the report and for the service plan. The Chair has been through the reasons and rationale, talking through the budget policy framework process for the approval of the plan, which now needs to go through Council, which is a relatively new requirement from the Youth Justice Board. So I'll go into the supporting information 4.1. So Youth Justice Board, our regulatory body, provides clear guidance for all services across the UK around development of our statutory Youth Justice Plan. There is a standard template, so we are limited to some degree around the content of the plan. We've mandated in terms of what needs to be included within that. We have to have engagement with our Youth Justice Board regional lead. So every service across England and Wales has a regional management oversight person, comes in, scrutinises us every quarter, scrutinises our plan before submission, and works with various services to make sure there's ongoing quality and development of that service, and the plan reflects that. We also have quite a formal structure in terms of gaining consultation and feedback from those that use our services, so children, young people, families and victims, but also those that are in staff consultation. We consult with our statutory board, so our government arrangements are through our Youth Justice Partnership Board and the chairs as well, Director of Children's Safeguarding, former service for youth justice as well. So all board members, including statutory partners, are included in the consultation. The final part of that process is obviously going through this framework to make sure the scrutiny before that final sign-off by full counts. So we followed all those processes in Derby. We submitted the plan on time. We were granted a 1-month extension because we have our youth justice inspection in June of this year, and the report will be available from midnight tonight, so it's embargoed until that point in time. But it is worth a read of that report. It's very positive for the most part, with some recommendations, but lots around good practice. So that will be available from tomorrow. We've also done the consultation with the staff team, with our partnership board, and we've submitted the report to the YJB oversight manager, who's pleased with the feedback. The report is good quality, a number of areas of innovative practices to notice. It's also been signed off by the chair of the board in lieu of full council sign-off, so it has gone through some processes before we go through this. At 4.3, you can see the body of the plan and in terms of the structure, and these are the stipulations from the Youth Justice Board about what must be contained in the plan. Given that they give us over 500,000 to kind of be compliant with that. We've always submitted the plan on time in a timely way to a good quality of service in Derby. These are all the requirements of what the Youth Justice Board outlined. In terms of vision and strategy, we adopt something called the Child First approach, and that's a nationwide strategy from the Youth Justice Board. That's about the research and the evidence which tells us the most effective ways of intervening with children at risk of being involved in these systems. It's also a set of principles and tenets about ways of working with children, dealing with children first, offenders second. So making sure that we balance that up with risk management. So we've got really robust mechanisms around how we manage risks. We work with multi-agency public protection arrangements, seconded police officers, police control risk and strategy meetings. We work really closely with our children's social care colleagues, with Section 47 strategy meetings, etc. So really robust partnership arrangements around risk management, also balancing that up with this child first and strengths-based approach we've got in children's services. As you see from the structure of the plan and the copy of the plan and the appendices that we've submitted, it's really detailed in nature, but it does give a really in-depth overview of the context in which the service delivers or is delivered within the city, the context of the city in terms of public health data, some demographic data within there, but also some performance data and then some of our key challenges within the service and what we aim to do about some of those challenges. There's significant detail on service structure, the governance and staffing arrangements, which the Youth Justice Board want to see because obviously they're putting in funding. So they want to see that the money being used by the Youth Justice Board, money is being used to good effect, used in an evidence-based way for services to children and people, for staffing, etc. And they also want to be reassured that our governance arrangements and scrutiny arrangements are robust within the service. We're very much at part of self-assessment, not just an action plan. It is how have you been doing, what you've been achieving, and what do you plan to do next based on the action. And I mentioned in executive scrutiny as well that we do something called strategic intelligence assessment every year for our youth justice plan, so gather all the data and information preceding the year in terms of who we work with, demographic background, types of offences, children's needs, to utilise that to inform the body of the report and what we can say within. There are several areas around performance within the plan. So similar to colleagues in early help, children's social care, there is a robust, structured performance framework. Some of that includes key performance indicators, which are set by the Youth Justice Board, and which all services need to report on nationally. Children who offend, first time entrance into the youth justice system and children sentenced to custodial sentences. That's backed up by measures for standards for children in the youth justice system, which again is more compliance around home visits, number of times children have contacts with the service, and then local PARS data or performance of risk system. So there are measures within that as well, which we report back. The report also includes information we have around qualitative work, so the case audits of our direct work, children with people and victims. That's reported to our Youth Justice Partnership Board for scrutiny on an ongoing basis in terms of the quality of work, how well we're doing things such as our assessment work with children, planning work, direct delivery with victims, etc. And that again is included in the report, and also some of the things that we plan to do next year to develop that further. There's also specific areas that we report back on. You've seen the report, so serious youth violence, prevention, diversion, demographics and disproportionality, which is a big thing in the youth justice system, because we've across justice for a number of years, areas of disproportionality, or different groups, different groups of people. So it all culminates with the development plan within the plan. So you can see the set of areas that we report back on: helping children reduce reoffending, making sure that the victim delivery is high quality, reducing risk, custodial sentences, etc. So there is a quite comprehensive development plan at the rear of that report. We've also got a section that is dedicated to workforce learning and development. That section reviews with the staff group what they've achieved in the last 12 months in terms of their development, what they want to see within the plan. So that's part of the consultation we do with our direct staff members. And we put that together with our children's workforce development team to make sure that there is continuous professional development. All staff are getting training based on the needs of children and people victims. We review the plan every 8 weeks. So the management team meet with the information analyst. We crunch the data, we look at the doing, make sure there's really clear aligned tasks for different leads within the management teams. We've got different managers aligned to different areas of service delivery, such as risk, custody and courts, or interventions, prevention, diversion. They would take a lead on the various parts of the plan related to their area of the service. As we mentioned, we submitted dependencies on work completed last year as part of the plan. And at 5.1, you can see the stakeholder engagement. So the work we've done with children and people, families, service, and surveying and questionnaires we've done with internal staff, in terms of their views around plan content, any gaps in service, things we should be doing that we aren't doing, and that's considered for inclusion within the plan. As mentioned, it's a statutory requirement under the Climate Disorder Act. It goes through this process for approval, and we're confident we've met all of these justice board stipulations in terms of the content. So in a nutshell, that's an overview. It is a hugely detailed document that's been seen, so we've had to take feedback and questions.
Perfect, thank you so much. Rylance, do you have questions and things? Right, so yeah, we'll start with you then, Councillor Wright. Keep it as concise as possible, and limit to 2 questions if you have questions as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just turn everybody's attention to pages 12 and 13 of the plan, which is in Appendix 1. It's actually in the plan, and it's the performance data, which I want to focus on, because I think it goes to the very core of the questions I've got around this plan. But while you're going to the performance data on pages 12 and 13, I'm here because this plan was referred from executive scrutiny last week to this board, which I feel is the best board to consider the youth justice plan. It's got the people around the table who've got the knowledge and experience. Last year's plan went to full council for approval with very little scrutiny, and which is why I wanted to make sure this year that it got effective scrutiny, really for two reasons. Is it actually impacting on whether children and young people get involved in crime? Is it having an impact? And secondly, is it providing value for money for taxpayers of Derby? And for me, that's the crucial test of any plan. So that's why I wanted to focus attention on this. There are a number of other issues, and Andrew's gone through. It's a very comprehensive plan, 86 odd pages. But for me, that's a challenge in itself. You know, this plan is designed to drive performance, to keep children, young people out of crime and criminality. Now, how are you going to drive day-to-day performance of individuals involved that with an 86-page plan? I fail to see. You know, it needs to be in a format that can be used on a day-to-day basis. But for our purposes, your purposes as a scrutiny committee, you've got the ability to actually challenge that and on the behalf of the council make recommendations about how it can be approved in the future. And I think one of them is to make it more accessible and transparent to both, you know, because I really defy anybody who's not got Andrew's day-to-day knowledge and to actually understand what the plan's designed to deliver. And the reason I'm focusing on performance, for me, that is, you know, does the plan do what it says on the tin? Can you, by looking at this, say that it's doing anything to reduce offending in Derby and its value for money? And it's not inconsiderable resources. It's about £1.5 million worth of investment and about 25 full-time staff. So on page 12, there's actually 3 really key performance indicators, all really, really important and exactly the indicators that you need to actually assess whether the plan's making any difference. If you look at the first one, which is custody, number of children, young people going into custody, this is 4 quarters of the year. And if you look at Derby, 1 person Q1, 0 in Q2, 2 in 3, 4. These are so low numbers that have got virtually little and no statistical significance. It might be that all of these people weren't even Derby residents. They could have been people arrested in Derby but come from Ilkeston or somewhere else in Derbyshire or even Liverpool or where else. There's no analysis of whether this actually means anything. And because there's such low numbers, you can't really give them any statistical credence. And if you look at the analysis at the bottom, we're celebrating that nobody came into custody in Q2 yet. Brilliant. That should be out. But what does it mean? Without any analysis around it, it tells you nothing whether this is success. Is this good, bad or indifferent? The analysis should tell us whether it is good, bad or indifferent performance. Also, the second table compares us against our average. You look across all of our family that Derby is compared to, and they're all very low numbers. You know, and I've actually taken the time to look at youth justice plans from other areas who actually do provide some tests of significance. So is this data, is it a significant change? It could all be down to random factors, random variation. You know, I spent 30 years as a police officer developing plans, and I quite honestly wouldn't have put forward this data without any saying, being able to statistically say whether this data has got any meaningful relevance to the figures they're putting in. And with such low numbers, you know, it's anybody with any understanding of statistics know that you can make very few inferences when you've got such low numbers. So I fully support, I mean, I think it's such a crucial area, we need to get it right. If you move on to the second performance indicator, which is around new entrants, first time entrants, again, a really important indicator. And again, you look at the data, just going back to one thing, the first thing tells me we have such low numbers in Derby that it really calls out for a collaborative approach with other areas so that you can actually, because we're putting potentially a lot of effort into very little reward, we ought to be collaborating with other areas, potentially sharing resources. So just moving on to the second one, first time entrants, really, really important. But again, it's 4 quarters of 1 year. And again, anybody with any statistical knowledge, it's too short a period to actually look at trends or look at impact. And again, the numbers quite, you know, they're quite small numbers. Bear in mind these figures, for example, period 1 in Derby with 44 first-time entrants across a 3-month period. You know, that's a very, very small number. that you're dealing with. And again, it's really good news because we're not getting a lot of children, young people coming into the system, but we've got no indication of whether, again, these figures are any statistical significance, whether the trend is full, it's just 1 year's snapshot. And again, 1 year is no time at all in terms of managing crime. And we should be saying, what is it? Is this? There's no analysis whether this is good performance, bad performance, and different, apart from the comparative figures, which are useful. But again, because it makes better news, we're comparing Derby's performance against our family, which is how it should be because they're most similar areas. But we also should compare it against the East Midlands average and the national average to look at performance. And the analysis doesn't really take that into account. The final performance indicator is reoffending, and this for me is where the Youth Justice Partnership should have the most impact, because first time arrest largely the domain of policing, because that's when people come into custody. The second one, new entrants. I mean, that could be for any, and obviously youth justice system, because they're new entrants, are probably not going to have any history to deal with them. Whereas reoffending is again where the youth justice system service, in my view, should have the maximum impact, because that's when you can really apply your resources to people they know about, etc. And again, very little, although we've got the figures in comparison, again, it's just 1 year, 4 quarters, and doesn't really tell us a lot in terms of reoffending and whether we're having any impact at all. So my first recommendation for this group would be to suggest to Cabinet that we actually have a proper crime analyst with a statistical background to actually advise on presentation and analysis of these statistics, because quite, and I'm exaggerating a point to make it, I think it's lazy. It's not providing the information that either we as a board, an executive scrutiny board, children and young person board, or a Cabinet, to assess whether we're making any difference. So that'd be my first thing. I'm not going to go to the whole rest of the report, although there are a lot of issues that I expect members will be able to, if having read it, will be able to identify themselves, whether it's good, bad or indifferent. But for me, if you can't trust the performance and put your confidence in it, then what is the point really, the whole of the rest of the plan? Because as a scrutiny board, performance is one of the things we should be focusing on. Does the performance of this demonstrate to us that we're actually impacting on crime and criminality, children and young people in Derby? And I suggest, and I'm more than welcome to be challenged on this, but I can't see from the analysis that's provided whether it is good, bad or indifferent. It's just knowing. So what I would recommend the board do is actually support recommendation 2.1, which is the 4-week consultation, and then provide recommendations back to Cabinet as how we can approve it. Now, I do recognise that we're halfway through the year and the criminal justice plan is actually being delivered, and it would be the worst of all things to divert those people's staff away from their day-to-day business to actually do a fundamental review of this plan. So what I would recommend is that this group through Cabinet recommends that we do a fundamental review of the youth justice plan, probably the spring of next year, so that it can be ready for when we look at budgets for the next full year, but based on a basically rip it up and start again, zero-based budget, so that we can actually justify all the activity that is being presented here. And we've got the benefit of His Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation providing feedback. There's lots of people with understanding and knowledge of where we, and it may be that following that, it's we can get some not better performance indicators. Performance indicators are entirely appropriate, but better analysis of the data to say whether we're being delivering or not. So my recommendation to you as a board is actually exercise your duties as a scrutiny board. You can ask for an in-depth review. You can look at performance issues, and you can make recommendations to cabinet. We missed it last year because it was too late. Never got the scrutiny. It went to full council and got nodded through. I think what opportunity to really challenge such an important service to Derby.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Right. So we do have to just be careful with recommendations and things. We can't really take anything from you as an observer as regards the recommendations. However, if officers want to respond to anything from that, and potentially if you're able to outline the impact of doing what Councillor Wright suggested, what impact that would have on the plan. Able to outline, Dawn?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the performance data in there, and performance data is that's by the Youth Justice Board, and I think there is analysis within the report through the other sections of the report, diversions covered in some detail in the report. The work we're doing around custody, resettlement is really detailed within the quantitative areas of the report, and the work that we've done to bring about reoffending by children and young people is in the report. That data looks across 4 quarters at performance trends, and I think it takes a genius to work out that, particularly with first-time entrants, and particularly with custody, we're doing a fantastic job in Derby reducing children going to custody, which is a positive figure, because when children go to custody, their chances of reoffending are significantly and exponentially increased. So to kind of go down to 0 young people, and they are all Derby or Mental Council, right? That is fantastic performance. We've developed fantastic relationships with our core colleagues to achieve this. With colleagues in HMI Railway Burrington for good resettlement practice, which again is outlined within the detail of the report. And the work we've done on first-time entrants, in particular in relation to prevention and diversion, where we've rewritten a new strategy. We've brought those figures down significantly. At one point, Derby was an outlier in relation to its first-time entrants being far too high. So we've worked with police colleagues to develop that strategy. We now have a prevention and diversion panel, which is a partnership panel with police, social care, youth justice services, remedy to victim service. And that has, as outlined in other parts of the report, really helped us to bring down that first-time entry rate, which was significant. And reoffending is kind of covered in all areas. So work we do about risk, work we do around to reduce disproportionality, interventions are specific to children's needs, and that is helping with reoffending data as well. So always happy to kind of take advice and support in terms of how we could do some of that analysis. But we do have bi-monthly meetings around our performance within the service with the information analyst and managers. We take all of our performance data to the partnership board, where it's scrutinised by board members, including statutory partners, to account for that, challenge and support from partners and work. So I think there's more we're not quite sure it's lazy.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hudson next.
Thank you. This is sort of going to arc back to what Councillor Wright just said. Anyway, thank you for putting these reports together in the book. As I sat down to read these 80 pages, by page 20, I was starting to completely zone out and thinking about anything else but what was in the report. It is a lot to try and take on board if you're not used to actually seeing what's there. So my head went into an instant zoning into an area of this. And I was looking at the resource allocation, the FTE, the different job roles, the different skills involved in those. How does that match up to previous plans with this plan and what you envisage going forwards? Then my mind was asking me, is it possible to deliver the plan with the FTE and the resources we've got under the status quo? Do you see any challenges with that going forwards? Because we all know where the revenue spending goes from one budgetary allocation to another.
Actually,
is what I'm looking at here in terms of the staffing resource, is that under the status quo of the current plan, or is it what it will be under the new one? Is it possible to actually deliver the same plan? Does it vary from the staffing resources you've got previously? Doesn't change from one to another, and that is adequate to actually deliver the plan itself. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Thank you for a very comprehensive. just an observation really. And what I'm doing here is the synergy between page 14, which is cost of living, deprivation, and how that may lead to young people hitting, so their socioeconomic background and the impact of that risk. It is risk and getting involved in crime. So there's that, and then we have national priority areas at page 32. What we have here in terms of structure, which socioeconomically is, we have information about the ethnicity and the gender of the young people. However, there isn't a category on their socioeconomic background. So it's basically, could you explain why socioeconomic factors is considered a risk, yet when you look at the demographic of those that are likely to be involved in terms of gender and ethnicity, why isn't socioeconomic? So there's that. And then finally on page 33, there's something about issues relating to gender identity. Could you explain what that is? Thank you.
So the measures we've got in there are measures that are Youth Justice Board measures. So gender, proportionality around ethnicity, they're all measures that we've Board. In terms of socio-economic background, that we know that the kind of young people from that background are predominantly overrepresented in the service. There isn't a measure within our system to be able to provide that data.
Why? Because if we're talking about intervention.
Yeah, with the interventions do support young people and families in terms of socio-economic background. So supporting families work, we'll work with families to help them access benefits, work, education, employment, training. So those resources and interventions are available for children.
Yeah, but you don't think there is a need to have a specific measurement of socioeconomic factor in the same way in which you're looking at ethnicity and sex?
I think we know that data.
Yeah, but you are, but this report doesn't tell me that.
It's something.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Again, to echo what people have said already, really thank you for bringing the in-depth level of detail that it goes to. I've got quite a fair few questions actually, but I do, before that, I've quite a bit of sympathy with what Councillor John Wright mentioned in terms of the data being provided only really for the last year that's gone by. It takes me back to when I was cabinet member and libraries data was handed to me for a 3-month period. And my first question was, well, what about the 3 months before, the 3 months before, 3 months before? I can compare different parts of the year, but I can't compare one summer with last summer. And whenever any of us in our ward think about antisocial behaviour, and we know there's always an uptick over the summer, you can't really compare one summer to another if you don't have the data from the summer before. So why do we only have 1 year's worth of data? And if data is held for previous years, who made the decision not to put it in the report?
We've always reported back on the 12-month period to show the trends over the 12-month period, but if that's something that board members want, then that's something we can do. We've got data that goes back a number of years, so it's not a challenging thing to do.
I think it'd certainly be helpful, and I don't know how many years we've got it for. It's my first year on the board since 2021, so I've not seen the previous reports that came, but it would certainly be helpful, I think, for all members of the board to be able to consider those sort of year-on-year reports. That's something I think would be helpful, but I'll leave that one for the second and go on to some of the questions I had from you, of course. KPI 6, we mentioned that sort of increased use of virtual reality. Now, I know a few years ago, through Safer Streets funding, there was a load of VR headsets purchased, and they purchased sort of knife crime scenario sort of things that have been used in various different schools. Is that still something that's being used, and is that something that forms part of prevention methods under the plan?
That's something we want to do. That's part of that Safer Streets initiative, linking with community safety partnerships as well. So we've got some programs that we brought in with funding from public health and from community safety. VR headsets is something to do because it's the way children learn. It's what they want to set for learning staff. So that's something we're looking to do this year.
Is there a reason it's not been looked into before? Because I think the head sexual purchase 22-23 budget.
Yeah.
Or has it just not been something that's?
It's a challenge for the past.
It's great to hear that that's something that we're looking at going forward. A few other questions, if that's okay, Chair. So turning to page 40 of the report, so the what does serious violence look like in Derby section sort of threw me a little bit, the way the paragraph's worded. So I just want to go through it a little bit in detail. So it says that Derby has the third highest rate per 1,000 residents and most similar groups for violent crime, and the rate is slightly above the MSG average. What is the rate? Because we're told that it's slightly higher, but what is the rate?
That's from serious violence strategy, so it's adults and children's data. Yep. So it's not data that do that.
Okay, and it's I guess the same for the bit further down. We're told that total crime across all ages in Derby has increased by 0.9%, but again we're not told what from and what to. It's the same answer really for that one.
If that's the same, I can only answer on children's data.
No, the only one, it may be another one we're not sure on. So it's just a bit of a wording thing. So we've got total serious violent crime in Derby has increased. Total of serious violence related crime is decreased. Do we know what the difference is between those two? We've got violent crime and serious violence crime and serious violence related crime.
Yeah, serious violence has got a specific definition around certain types of offences that is stipulated. And then there's other offences which are similar in nature but not within that cohort of offences.
Okay, I'm thinking there's one other bit from that section through which it says it's in the very final paragraph, the second to last line, this inconsistent. Is that this is inconsistent or this is inconsistent? Because it's really determines how we view that paragraph, whether it's inconsistent or is inconsistent. Page 41, second to last line. So this is this inconsistent with the highest proportion. It's not clear whether that should be this is consistent or this is inconsistent. Which one it was?
This is consistent.
This is inconsistent. Okay.
Lots of typo.
I think it was whether that should be this is in or this it's consistent.
It could do with someone
Proofreading.
proofreading it and checking out the various graphics and things, because some of them
Yes.
you can't.
Yeah, some of the
Quotes
graphics are on
and
top as
things.
well. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes,
sorry,
no, it's
apologies.
Three for other ones. The stats on page 42 in the child exploitation section. In the sexual exploitation section, we're told that there are 6 cases where children are at significant risk of CSE. That seems a remarkably low figure. I mean, I grew up in Rotherham, and obviously Rotherham is famous for the child sexual exploitation incidents that happened there. But Rotherham is about the same size as Derby population-wise, so about the same number of children. Are we sure that 6 is the right number there?
The number of children out to these justice services at risk of CSE, not all children at risk of CSE.
Okay, no, like this. And again, then, so looking at the criminal exploitation section there as well, so we've got 41 cases, so we've got a risk of 71% from the preceding year. Again, we don't know year on year how that sort of represents, whether that's an up and down figure, but what caused the increase of 71%? And that's quite a monumental increase.
Yeah, there are some kind of police investigations which kind of people involved in, and I think we're also getting better at assessing the risk of child exploitation.
So possible sort of increase in what people were doing, but also an increase in ability to sort of see that.
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing thing. People have skill base and knowledge base around this all the time.
Yeah, I want to have questions. Go on there.
Obviously, so the number of children is low for what we know in the plan. Is there a plan to identify more children in that? Because obviously there are much higher number than 6 across the city. Is there a plan to try and identify them and offer that help?
There's a whole child exploitation strategy. That's child sexual exploitation and child criminal exploitation. So that's a wider police partnership and social care partnership arrangement.
Perfect, thank you.
One last one, if I can share. It's also a general question, really, around to the tactics that are used. And do we still use that sort of what I would call sort of preventative tactics that I think once would have been classed as a sort of fear tactic, but are designed to open young people's eyes to the realities and potential consequences of their actions? I'll use a bit of an example, really. I know, Chair, the other day we watched some of the old public safety announcement adverts that used to be out. One of them was for road safety and one of them was for fire testing your smoke alarms. And it was that sort of messaging around not just that it's important to check them, that if you don't, people can die. If you don't look at a junction, it's not just a case of you might have someone sound the horn at you, you might kill somebody. And I remember being, I think it was year 6 I would have been in, and prank phone calls were what nearly everybody seemed to be doing. People had only just got phones, and it was, everyone was watching The Simpsons and Horrid Henry and that kind of thing. And prank phone calls were always the thing people did. I think the school became aware of it, and they did what's called and the school did they did what I think they called a crucial crew session at the time. And they showed us a video, and I still remember the video to this day, of some people making a prank phone call and a fire engine didn't get to a fire on time and a child died in a house fire. And it was the first time any of us in that class had ever thought about the fact that can be the consequence of doing this. I don't think anybody ever did them again. And it suddenly stopped being the thing that kids did in school. Are those sort of tactics still used? Are they still things we look at doing to open people's eyes to what can happen?
We don't tend to do that. The evidence-based use engagement is damn funny, doesn't really support that as an evidence-based approach to helping children change behaviour. Some elements of that can work alongside other evidence of education work with children and people. So motion programmes where they're learning about risks, where they kind of do what we get for being shot straight to tactics that just don't work on them. So we try to.
Teacher.
Any more questions from the board? Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to thank the really informed questions, and to Self-Councillor Wright in terms of the restructuring of the plan. I believe that you recall that the structure is not within our gift. It's set out by the Youth Justice Board. So I'm slightly concerned around a complete rewrite of the whole plan. I'm not sure that that is within our gift to be able to do. And we have, I appreciate there may be changes to be made, and I welcome that, and I understand, there needs to be maybe a more accessible version for yourselves, councillors, so that you can understand the nuances of the report. But we have actually received quite high praise from the Youth Justice Board in terms of our plan, and the plan structure from Derby has been used to set the standard for the template across the country. So I would like to have probably more discussion with you around that before any recommendations or any decisions are made on that. Chair.
Yes, I'd like a recommendation, please. Going back to the point I made in relation to the fact that socioeconomic factors is considered a risk. Okay. Yet on page 32, where you talk about overrepresentation, there's no indication specifically about how socioeconomic factors are impacting in this. Are played out in terms of representation of young people involved in the criminal justice system. I hear what you say, that you do things that assume that socioeconomic factors are significant, are important. However, I'd like it to be, I think it ought to be explicitly stated, even if it's just a case of narrating it rather than presenting statistics. I think it's a key structural matter that should be given a high profile, because if you can sort young people's deprivations, we're getting that. And it has huge implications for intervention. So I'm asking as a recommendation, please.
We've got a seconder for the recommendation. Yeah, Councillor Lundell. Does anybody like to speak on that recommendation at all? Anything to add?
I think it's eminently sensible. The more data we can have, the better.
So if we want to move to vote on that recommendation, for all of those in favour? unanimous for the board meeting. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wright. I think that's a very pleasant right there. So, if we've got any more comments or questions at all from you, yeah, that's all I've got.
See that you have things in here like trauma informed that's go back to about gender and go into a bit more detail, find out a bit more about what you mean
Gender identity.
the gender identities, that means so training for the staff who are dealing with the students, young people who are so you mentioned in there about toxic masculinity and groups for girls, but is there more to that, or is that just
for what you're asking? But we do have a girls group because the issues and reasons girls come into the system do differ from that of boys. So a lot of their offending is often more emotionally driven than boys' offending behaviour. So the group work sessions are delivered on that basis. So we're thinking more about emotional health issues, girls, relationship issues as well, self-esteem. We've even done some kind of combat classes for girls. And boys group is more around what they're hearing on the internet, the messaging boys are getting from the internet, from podcasts, from social media, lack of positive male role models in some of their communities, some of their family backgrounds as well. So we've hired functional firms to do some work directly with some of our boys as well. Found their life identity and how some of that links into their offending behaviours.
I would say boys' behaviour is also based in emotion and lack of ability to show emotion. I think boys don't cry for too long. So that should also be incorporated into the work with young men, as well as young women, and young women also have sexual needs. It's 6 1 half, but absolutely separating. I understand why you might have them separate, but it's also good to bring them together and get them to understand each other as well.
I think it's important for boys to have their own space as well.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, create spaces where all those things can happen.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I'll make a recommendation as well, Chair, and it's sort of on the lines of what Councillor Wright was saying. I take the point around the statistician to look at these figures, but I think because we've only got the year for it now, we wouldn't be able to do it for this year, but I think for next year that would be really, really a helpful thing to have done. So really the recommendation I'd like to make at this point, but I'll take some sort of guidance from Andrew first if I can. How many years back have we done the youth justice plans? How far back have we got figures from?
15, 20.
I'll not take us back that far. Yeah. I think, but I suggest that perhaps we do a sort of a 5-year comparison years, so that we're able to make that comparison trend, because obviously we're living in a very different world now to the COVID world that we had before. As we were just talking about with social media, the threats and things that people are picking up on and acting on are very different to what they were 5 years before, and it would be good to be able to make comparisons of that. So recommendation really would be that for the performance isn't over the previous years, it's over the previous 5 years.
I'd be happy to second that as well. Anybody want to add anything else to that or additional things? Yeah. Okay, so I want to move to vote for that. So for that recommendation.
Yeah.
It's unanimous. Perfect. Thank you. Any other speakers at all? Any other questions from anybody? Yeah, Councillor Falk.
I just wanted to ask, and I can't find the right page now, so forgive me for that. But are you, is your team, have you got full capacity on your team, or have you got vacancies, so to speak? So are you working some people over the capacity?
No incentive question yet. No, we're full capacity. There's no vacancies in the team at the moment. So yeah, free staffed.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. So I've got a couple of comments myself. Really good scrutiny from everybody as well. That was really, really good. I would also like to just say thank you as well for the time and effort gone in from officers. It is a big report. It is a big, big plan to have gone through. So thank you for your time and effort that has gone into it. It is really good to see the amount of training and the resources that are being put into the different groups as well. There's a lot of collaborative work that is going on. So really, really nice to see that. Putting those training hours into people as well, so that there's people at every level that's able to put into children as well. So that's absolutely fab to see. As you stated, that child first approach is so vital. We do need to be treating children as children, providing them with that support, not just punished for doing something wrong, actually having that support in place. So spot on. Collaborating with children as well, section on page 16, that's brilliant. Actually having the feedback from the children themselves is a big mistake that adults do, where they go, I think this will work, and put it in place, and the children go, wait, what? And it doesn't work. So absolutely fabulous to see that. Definitely still room for improvement, 100%. There are some really good statistics, especially from the children as well. They do say there's a little bit of wiggle room and some improvement that can be needed. At one point, you do say that it can be improved by recruiting a support and families worker in 25-26. Later down in the document in page 46, say that one has been recruited. Is that the one to fill that gap, or do you need another one?
No, it's just one.
Perfect, that's fabulous. So yeah, there's some really good stats. Like I say, it's nice to see the comment from the young people. I think a positive idea for future as well, if you can add it in, is more comments from children. So we had comments later on from families and kind of the adult side of it, but I think there's only one comment from child. But actually, it would be really nice just for the board to see how the children feel. It would just be nice to have, so that would be a nice thing. The key improvement areas are really good. It's nice again to see that you're talking directly with the children and the families. Definitely something to be continued. And then on page 14, so we mentioned cost of living, and obviously the poverty and crime, and the links between those. There are you say that there are plans to recommence work with schools with the children at risk of offending at an early age. Can you expand at all, kind of what sort of work with schools you're going to be doing, or could you just expand any more on that at all?
Yes, so we're going to be doing some group work in schools. So what we're doing at the moment is gathering data on schools with higher exclusion rates and looking to do the work with the feeder schools, those secondary schools, so we can target those children who are more likely to be subject to part-time timetables, part-time exclusions or fixed-term exclusions, and working with them either in group works or based school thinks they need that really intensive direct work. We are also part of the behaviour strategy panel, so children at risk of exclusion, we have representative on that panel, so that if children need that direct one-to-one work, they can fold into the service. And we have education representatives on our prevention and diversion as well. So schools are really desperate to work with the children at junior or infant school even age. The earlier we can get in, further upstream we can work with children and people, the more impact we can have.
And then my final thing really is the as for next year, so it's not necessarily a recommendation to go forward, but just more of an ask really of, can the board see the plan a bit earlier, even if it's not finished, not in final stages, but maybe just so we can because there are a few bits and bobs that we've picked up on, if we could pick up on those a little bit earlier, that might be a little bit helpful, if that's a decent ask.
It's a really big piece of work to pull together. Yes. Outline what has to be included in that. It's really difficult to pull that together because several people are working simultaneously. So if you want something specific, it's really important.
Yeah, if it was a certain little areas.
That might look like, and we can try and work around that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions before we move on? Yes, Councillor.
4.3. The body of the plan follows a structure that's given to you with all the headings and the topics. Is it exhaustive? I mean,
you can have a copy of the Youth Justice Board guidance on Youth Justice plans, and you can read it, the detail that they ask for in each of those sections. So it's not just a header and it's a free script.
Right.
It's a header with a number of bullet points and narrative about what should be included within that, hence why it's so dense.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just the list of, it's just the topics and the headings. mindful of the point that's made about the impact of context, external factors such as social media. Don't know whether that itself as a topic, given that it appears to have an impact on children and young people's lives, but I suppose it does on adults as well. So I just wondered whether that specifically ought to be a topic. Just a thought, but as you said, this is quite prescriptive, isn't it? You're given this, so perhaps you might feed back to the board that they ought to consider other topics and other issues that impact on the people's life.
That'll be longer then.
Oh yes. I know that, but we're trying to, we're sort of trying to get rid of this and do things that will stem people getting involved.
It's just to support it, but it's a national plan, so we can feedback.
Yeah.
Get that included.
Okay. Just a thought.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. So before we move on, you can have free leave if you want now.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us for the first part of your contributions as well. And thank you again, Andrew, for such a big reform.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well done.
Fabulous. So next item is the Families Partnership Overview. So its report is to give the CYT Scrutiny Review Board an overview of Families First Partnership, which is in Appendix 1. So it's one of several developments taking place nationally in children's services as part of the new Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. So Derby City Council is preparing to implement a Families First Partnership programme from April 2026 with a focus on strengthening family support and safeguarding. So we've got Suanya in attendance. So if you to take over,
Yeah,
and Sarah, sorry, yes.
We're explaining that really well in terms of this really great, exciting new reform that's coming to Derby. So this is all about developing a Families First Partnership, and similar to some of the conversations that we've had actually in the previous section around collaboration of many sort of sectors and partners to make this work. This is all about joining up services across Derby to prevent escalation of children and families into statutory intervention, to ensure that there's a joined up family help offer across the city, and to strengthen those family networks, which we know are the absolute bedrock for all children if they're going to have good outcomes in life. So there's lots of opportunity, Derby, and we are coming from this with a strong baseline. So in terms of the guidance that came out in March, we have until April to do a plan. So this is really great to bring it here for your consideration and contributions into what does Derby need to create a fantastic family first partnership. So as I said, we're coming from, in children's services, we're coming from a really strong baseline. People will be aware that we had our ILACS Ofsted inspection published in May, and I am incredibly proud to be able to say we are outstanding across the board for all of our work in all sections of children's services. So in terms of the early help, child in need, those are the children that are in care, which is the services that Andrew leads, and experience of care leaders as well, which was a new grading. And just a quote from the inspection report there says, frontline practitioner of the service's greatest strength, their consistently high quality work with children and families is making a real difference to the safety and life chances of Derby's most vulnerable children. So when we think about where do we start, what's our baseline, we have got a really strong baseline.
I just jump in and just congratulate you on that. That is amazing to have outstanding over.
We actually brought the report through Children's Scrutiny, which we've got one recommendation, which we will need to submit before October, but I think we'll have to bring that back through. But yeah, we're starting in strong. So not just, so we're I think in terms of a partner, the local authority sort of leading this. Next slide, please. There's also a really good opportunity system-wide in Derby for us to be really looking at how we develop family help, and how do we help our most vulnerable families? How do we make sure that they get services, the right services at the right time before having to wait and wait? And we know, and you'll be aware from your constituents' views around how, you know, unmet need and cases escalating up and not being able to get the services that they need. We're in a huge, I think, period of opportunity, really. There's lots of things that are happening that I think will help this. We have to manage this carefully so that children and families' needs don't get lost. But in local government reorganisation, there is a lot of opportunity there for families of Derby. If people weren't aware, there's been a 10-year NHS plan that's been published, and that is all about neighbourhood working. If I could just give one thing around families first, to take this delivery of services coalescing against around families in Derby. This is not about families coming into the sector or coming into services. This is about just coming out to families in the communities that they live in. We've talked a little bit about Families First, which legislation is pinned in, which is the Children's Wellbeing School and Families Bill, and that will oversee also the changes of Family Hubs. So Family Hubs has been here. Family Hubs have been exceptionally successful in Derby. We're really proud of Family Hubs. Family Hubs will continue, but they are going to be renamed into Best Start over the course of the next year. So people will be aware that there's been some negotiation and deliberation by government around changing that. And there will be a focus on school readiness, 4 to 5-year-olds, but retaining everything that Family Hubs did. So we're expecting and we're planning to ensure that Family Hubs becomes part of the suite of Family First interventions across the city. It's aligned and part of that delivery. Got lots of changes happening in adult social care, lots of changes happening in education. We've got our neighbourhood working, which is absolutely fantastic. That's evolving over in communities in place, which we absolutely need to make sure that we're aligned with. And the police and youth justice elements, they are also prioritising a prevention element to their work, which again is neighbourhood based. So all factors seemingly are on the same page around this is about early intervention, this is about prevention, this is about where do we need to focus. And for me, it's really exciting. This is about redressing the balance from about 15 years ago when money was taken out of that particular area, which caused, unfortunately, a direct route into statutory services. So we're starting now to kind of across the partnership look to rebuild that foundation, and the police and the health and the local authority are all doing their bit. I think that's the exciting part. Rebuild that. Okay. So the key features of the reforms are system reform, and we are, whilst the local authority have the grant and I'm the senior responsible officer, it is absolutely tripartite, but it's more than that. It's responsibility across education, police, health and the local authority to align their systems and make sure that where services are available or currently being delivered for children, that actually they look and are developed in an early intervention prevention. So the system as well, it's something that we need to strengthen that role of education, because they in the safeguarding world, they weren't safeguarding statutory partner, they working together, and this legislation addresses that. We want a system that really learns and improves and sort of leverages in the evidence and data that we know works well, and we have got a really strong collective evidence base of what works well. Family help. This is the right support at the right time, and we say that, and it's perhaps become a little bit cliche, but actually, our families don't always get the right support at the right time, and this is around us collectively understanding when would be that time, when that families tell their story once, that they are provided with whatever is required to prevent escalation at that time. And this is about also seeing that children operate in the context of the family as well. So my service, which is early help and children's social care, that will change to family help, because there's a recognition that children shouldn't be seen in isolation of the family. We should be working with that family as a whole. We do work with that, but they're not in the context of the, I suppose, of our service names, etc. So the term family help will go from the earliest possible point right up to child protection. Family networks is the third pillar, and this is really such a critical point. This is redressing the balance and giving parents and families a voice in the design and co-production of the services that we will be delivering over the next few years. We think we might do that quite well at times, but actually we probably don't do it enough. Some parts of the sectors do that better than was in statutory services, but because we're so heavily regulated, it's a little bit this is the legislation, this is what's going to happen, and families are very, very disempowered. What we know is that doesn't enable change, that doesn't enable empowerment of communities. So we are absolutely looking to develop alongside our suite of alliances in the city, so our Youth Alliance, our Faith Alliance, Food Alliance, our Family Alliance, so that we and participation from parents with lived experience, to help us design the system, the communication and services that are going to be of benefit to the future. And the final one is multi-agency child protection teams. So this has been very politicised around child deaths and continuing child deaths, not in Derby, stress to add, but nationally there's been very high profile child deaths and continue to be. And there has been a number of reports and serious incidents, national reviews around how this part of the work needs to be absolutely prioritised and be strong, robust, etc. I mean, for us in Derby, please be assured, we have at our Ofsted, and we seem to be outstanding in this area. However, other areas, as you'll be aware, during COVID, haven't necessarily had those robust processes in place, and unfortunately, children have unnecessarily died. This is a real key area that we feel is a strong base. This will be an area that we will be able to fulfil, I would say, quite sufficiently easily from where we're at. The final slide from me before I hand over to Sarah is around some of the initial planning that we've done so far. So as I said, we've had the guidance out from March. and it's taken a bit of time. I've got the programme manager, which is Sarah, and absolutely delighted. And we're just in the process of recruiting staff to support that transformation. But in terms of overarching reforms, we absolutely run strength-based model. Andrew talked about the child first model. So this is all about strength-based. This is the reason for we want to have our education front and centre within those areas, being absolutely family focused as an influence partnerships involved, including our third sector or anybody really who feels as though they have a stake in this. Our family help elements will be our early what's classed now as targeted early help of children in need. So our locality safeguarding team building from all family help, which is meant to demystify our families so that they're not surrounded. The aim is to have to hold the hand in the first screen, irrespective of the entry point, and to have that one key worker throughout their journey. So that would be interesting for us to develop that. Child protection, so expert practitioners, parent and child voice, and reviewing what we do our child protection conferences, again with the aim of inclusion of parents and understanding. Family networks, this is again about developing that voice for parents, about developing the family decision making. We already have family group conferencing, but this will be about helping and developing and encouraging and empowering families to do things that they would probably normally do around seeking self solution, supporting them to do that. If they need some support, then that being provided, but actually trying to be less of the state involved if it's to me. Clearly where there's a safeguarding need, obviously that will still do that, but this is around trying to empower our community. So super exciting. And hand you over to Sarah next.
I'm just going to do a little bit of background around what the learning is from this so far nationally and where we are in Derby in terms of establishing our programme of activity. So obviously the national guidance and the programme guide for all local authority areas was published in March. This had been informed by 2 waves of what they called Families First Children Pathfinders. So a number of authorities participated within each wave. So I think it was 3 within the first wave, 7 within the second wave. And they were looking to test different aspects of the reforms, recognising that all the areas are coming from a different starting point. That's not just in relation to the configuration of their services, but it's also in terms of the implementation of working together within those local authority areas and how the partnership comes together to deliver those. So based on the 10 local authority pathfinder areas, which are very much being used nationally as a learning opportunity for all local authority areas that are currently going through the development of their implementation plans, there has been a publication through a DFE commissioned organisation that has looked at what has been the learning over the last couple of years in terms of those pathfinders and the work they've done against each of the 4 pillars that's allowed them to move forward with the implementation of the reforms. Absolutely, throughout all of the areas of reflection that made the implementation plan successful was around that local area leadership with that shared commitment that came not just from the local authority, it was about all agencies coming to the table. It was about ensuring that there were seconded posts in place to the programme so that actually colleagues worked collaboratively and together to shape what needed to happen. It wasn't just one agency's view of where you needed to go, and then that was equally informed by engagement and co-production. So ensuring that you listen to and engage with professionals at all levels, not just at a strategic level, that you ensure you gather and galvanise the voices of all professionals, both within those kind of key statutory partners, but in the broader sense as well. So that's within wider education settings, that's within the early years settings, that's within the community and voluntary sector, and also most importantly, families and children and young people that may have received support or that may receive support. So ensuring that you really get that balance of engagement and that you listen and that you look, actually, how can that influence where we're going with what we want to develop in line with the reforms? Co-production is absolutely, and you'll see within the DFE attachment that went with the papers, absolutely central throughout the document. And I think it's about setting a baseline from which to work going forward. A lot of what is delivered within children's early help and children's social care is very much evidence-based, and we listen to views as part of that. But I think it's about building on that and broadening it out. It's about bringing in that feedback and that engagement that can come from different agencies as well. A culture of openness. We've got to recognise that this might be a case of trying something a little bit different. So within some of the Pathfinder areas, they will have actively engaged in pilot activity to really get that evidence of, does this work? Is this going to get us to where we want to get to for families and children within that particular local authority area? We, as was set at the slide at the start in terms of context, you know, focusing from a families first and strength-based perspective came through very strongly within the learning from the Pathfinders, and we are in a strong position in regards to that. Not on the slide, but some of the things that could be barriers to us moving forward with the reforms. Systems and information sharing. So obviously as the bill goes through, that provides more of the mandate and legislative basis for that. So that's currently going through the House of Lords at the moment. Always a barrier. We know that, you know, coordination and collation of systems across a number of different sectors and partner agencies is always a challenge. But I think it's about ensuring that we prioritise the areas that we need to focus on in the first instance. In some of the Pathfinder authorities, they found that there could be a tension between business as usual. So particularly within the policing sector, where they have potentially more of that enforcement role. But again, it's about bringing it back to that families first and looking at the broader aspects, and the policy landscape that was put at the start, I think gives us a real opportunity to think differently. And I think that actually you're seeing that, and I'm certainly seeing that in the conversations that we're having, and just the complexity of the landscape. There's a lot of change going on at the moment, and it's really important that we ensure that the reforms we need to make as part of this area of work align with and complement everything else, so that we're all working to achieve the same end outcome, which is improved outcomes for Derby, and within this case specifically, families and children. So we do have an established, or we're in the process of establishing governance arrangements to implement the change that we need to. We have it's overseen by the Derby and Derbyshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership Chief Officer Group, and we have a Derby and Derbyshire Strategic Governance Group, which takes that very senior level oversight of the implementation of the reforms. It is particularly helpful when we're looking at where there is that crossover, and when we look at the context of local government reorganisation, I think it's helpful to have that broader perspective. But the reforms are very much about delivering services that are based on local need. And subsequently, we have a Derby City and a Derbyshire focused delivery group, because this is about what we understand about the needs of children and families in Derby at the moment, and also what our models of delivery are and where we want to go, and what our families and our communities and our young people say they want from the different aspects of the reforms that we're seeking to make changes in. The project pillars that we have absolutely align to the four themes on the quadrant that was previously looked at, and then there'll be a number of what I would consider enabling work streams. So whether that's workforce development, recognising training is going to be a big part of any change that you implement, whether that's data and systems. Everything should be evidence-based from my perspective, that's my background. But also we should be looking to constantly question ourselves around the difference that we're making, and communications and engagement as a key theme that runs throughout the reforms and certainly the guidance that local authority areas have been presented with. So where are we now, and what are our priorities? What are we seeking to achieve over the next couple of weeks and months? Time's going incredibly quickly is what I will say. So what have we done? We're in the process of baselining against the minimum expectations. So the Department for Education, there are a series of minimum expectations as part of the guidance. What we will do though is we will engage our partners and wider stakeholders in understanding whether or not we have that consistency and understanding of the minimum expectations, because that allows us to shape where we want to go. And there is some financial literacy, some grant that comes alongside this. So we have identified and are continuing to identify how that can help us shape the change and transformation we're seeking to achieve, but also where there are opportunities to invest in the principles that sit behind the reforms and form the baseline of where we're needing to go. All local authority areas had to submit their first delivery plan to the Department for Education in June. This was very much a high level assessment of where you are and where we're seeking to go. As was submitted and was very much considered to be in line with what they would expect from Derby. We have a steering group in place and we have a delivery group in place, and we're in the process of just ensuring that we've got the robustness around our programme management governance. So where are we going over the coming weeks and months? What I would say is I'm not going to go through all of those, but for me, the key part is around that communication, engagement, and to shape our consistency of understanding of where we are, and also what we see as the opportunities as we move forward, and equally what's potentially going to stop us from getting to capitalise and maximise on those opportunities, and how do we mitigate those threats that will get us to the point of having a really clear, smart, co-produced and owned local implementation plan that will be ready to go from the 1st of April next year. So I'm going to hand back to Savannah to close in terms of what will be different.
Just very quickly, and going back to where I started. So what will be different from all of this? What we're aiming to do is absolutely transform our early intervention space, place-based early intervention prevention, with increased engagement and authentic engagement. Families work alongside us, co-producing, co-designing the system, so that the two people we're doing it with, and then we will look to see a much more collaborative system. So as mentioned, some of the information sharing that sometimes is the pitfall. We've got to get over that between partners. It's the cause of so many things that go wrong, including that. So systems will be better. Place-based universal intervention will be better, and engagement with families and communities will be better. That's what we're aiming for. Thank you. Happy to take any questions, comments.
Thank you, Savannah. Any comments or questions from anybody?
Okay, you know where I'm going to. The SEND education reforms.
Yes,
I know that any parent with an EHCP will see that you are changing that to be higher level need. Hearts will sing. It's hard enough to get an EHCP. It's not an easy process to go through. I'm pro making education spaces neurodiversity and disability inclusive. What does that look like? Because that is just, I mean, that's a huge thing for the SEND community.
It is, and I suppose in terms of whether if a child requires that level of support, then that will still continue. This is about trying to bridge some of the gaps and fill some of those gaps earlier on, which we know there are loads of gaps for parents who have children with special education with disability. So this is about us joining forces with aligning family hubs, the best start, and any other services that require grief health, to actually look at how do we deliver that accessible to an earlier stage. I suppose that in terms of you saying you believe that this may prevent families from accessing, or there's more barriers to accessing an education, health and care. I don't believe that will be so, because the criteria in the assessment remains the same.
Okay.
Obviously, the Senate is being reviewed nationally anyway, in terms of that whole framework. Now, we stay the same. We will work alongside that. This is very much aimed at that early stage.
I mean, ultimately, if we create inclusive classrooms, that is positive for everybody, not just neurodiverse people and disabled children, but for neurotypical children and non-disabled children, because everybody's included, then everybody thrives. It's just quite an anxiety raising thing for parents. So a lot of communication.
Absolutely, something around communication and explaining this programme, how it perhaps some myth busting around where if parents may feel that this may have an adverse impact on that particular area. It shouldn't do. It should seek to support.
I think and large quantities of training for teachers.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, we're looking as far and wide as possible as part of the development of the implementation plan in terms of who we engage with and how we engage. So that will certainly, we'll certainly be seeking to engage with whether it's through the existing forums that we have or going out. So we will be seeking to gain views that will shape where we need to go. But what I would say is it's also the start of the conversation. Part of the reforms is about embedding it within what we deliver on a day-to-day basis. So it's also about family-led support and help that's appropriate as well. But it's about ensuring that anything we create as part of the transformation work in terms of the implementation of the reforms, we can continue to sustain. So we can continue those conversations and we can continue to make sure that there's access to support through various different routes for all families. But I take your point specifically around special educational needs and disabilities, as I know that there's, a lot of challenges that families can encounter.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, of course.
First of all, can I just welcome this as an exciting opportunity? I think, personally, from somebody working day to day in education, I would love the opportunity to be able to contribute to anything as part of the conversation. If I'm hearing correctly, I'm seeing this as something that will run alongside other provision and services that are available for families, particularly with special educational needs. I think that is such a protected area, particularly within any city, but this is something to enhance families that are facing different things. So from education, it would be wonderful to have the opportunity. I know a lot of schools in the city are academies, and I hope that they are still able to contribute to the research that's going on as part of this, because schools often know what families are facing before anything would reach crisis point or hit a threshold for external. And schools are often now expected to try and provide every possible service that families need. And unfortunately, we haven't always got the expertise or the staffing available to do that. So I think having education as part of the conversation would be really helpful, because we may well just know what some families are facing on a day-to-day basis.
And I think in terms of the system leader, in terms of strategic view of the city, what does the city need at that level? I think absolutely schools have a voice. We're going to secondary, secondary, what's it called?
The secondary heads.
Yeah.
And also primary.
And primary as well. We'll also be having some wider workshops. So absolutely, if people want to be involved, we would absolutely welcome that. We need the voice of schools. We know that there's been that we're trying to be all things to all people. I'm not saying that I've got all the answers and I haven't, certainly I've got funding to go with it. We're having a conversation about the is the resources that we have. How do we best use them to support as many families as possible? I suppose I didn't say in terms of how it's important for us to implement escalation families in the statutory services. If people are not aware, that we focus on performance data. So it's important to scrutiny. We are outliers in terms of some of those cohorts of young people that come into my service into children's social care. So children in need, we are much higher per 10,000 than our comparators, and nationally. Child protection, we're still a little bit high, but again could do better. Children in care, again we've got too many children in Derby that have come into care. And this is all about the fragmentation and proliferation of services that haven't been able to hold families at an earlier stage. So that means that they've come into statutory provision. So we've got a duty to kind of do better for our families. They deserve to have quality of life in the community without state intervention at that level. And there's as much as we're doing that. So I am really passionate about this. I think it's the right thing to do. I'm really excited over the next few years.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for your presentation. It was really interesting. I wanted to pick up on what Councillor Lonsdale picked up on, which also concerned me, with a reference to redrafting the EHCP thresholds, which I saw on one of the systems-wide slides. And I just wanted reassurance around that, because one of the things...
it didn't mean that. It didn't mean.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, that's very reassuring. Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. My point was going to be, and I'll be greatly encouraged if it's not the case, that families I speak to in faith-based settings often find themselves struggling to get EHCP plans in place because the requirements for
it's national. Was it on the with the
bottom left
boxes? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
national
Okay.
national change, not
We'll leave that
local.
there.
Yeah, that's the policy context where we're operating.
Yeah. Okay. So that was fine. We'll leave that. A sort of left field comment. In addition to being my role in the Church of England, I'm also the vice chair of YMCA Derbyshire. We operate community-based nurseries in the city of Derby. In fact, we just had to withdraw from one, but we've retained our St Mark's Road nursery site. We're facing an acute challenge, which I think is probably relevant to a family's or place-based strategy, which is that we're not a local authority nursery, and so we don't attract the same funding as local authority nurseries. Neither are we a private for-profit service where we have that sort of income as well. And we're advocating for an understanding of community-based nurseries operated by charities like YMCA Derbyshire, which often work in areas of heightened socioeconomic deprivation. And our observation is that that often involves higher levels of SEND need and lower life skills and things like toileting and so on. But the funding is far more difficult to come by because we're independent organisations. We can't access many of the funding streams that school-based settings can access for wraparound services. So the simple request to take away is that consideration be given to the place of community-based nurseries and whether there could be a community-based nursery registration scheme that allowed for this particular funding and even access to the funding available to schools for wraparound services.
Fabulous. So yeah, that all sounds great. It's fab to see the preparation as well for the local government reorganisation. Just means that the services can then stay steady, stay as efficient as possible. So that's really good to see. Do you have a time scale of when we can get an update on it of to date? No, I was right the first time. An update. Brain's gone. It's too late. On how things are going when it's been implemented and things. So I think we'd be really, really keen to see how that's going.
We have to do. We'll have to have a presentation plan by early spring.
Yeah, so we have our next submission to the Department for Education is in December. Very much follows a similar position to the first one in that it's quite a broad general view of where the programme is going. In terms of the development of the implementation plan, I was just looking when your meetings are scheduled. I probably think that the February meeting would probably be an appropriate point. Nothing would be signed off at that point. So from a engagement and broader opportunity to shape and challenge, that would be an opportune time. I think anything before that would probably be too soon in where we are at the moment. But if there are members of the committee that have got particular interests or have got particular opportunities where you think actually great to connect with this part, you know, through your own links with communities and services for children and families, drop me an email. I'm more than happy to pick up and seek those opportunities. This is absolutely about shaping together where we go.
Perfect. So congratulations again on your outstanding in all areas. And thank you both for that report as well. Yeah. So there's no more questions on that one, so we'll move to the end of the item. So our last thing is just our work programme. So we have now, hopefully, well, with an addition now for February, a draft work programme. So hopefully we all had a chance to look over it. We've been tried to include as many items that we discussed last time as possible. We have had to be really careful not to overlap from other committees as well. So there were a few that were raised. So childhood obesity, for example, that's in adults and health. NHS dentistry, again, adults and health. The NHS bring a combined report on that. We, as CYP board members, we will be invited to attend that board meeting as well. Active travel to school is communities and adults and health, and holiday activities as well. It's a crossover with communities. So considering all of that, we've kind of tried to theme everything as much as possible. If we can add in the addition for February to bring this back as well, so we can have a little look at that. Families first. Is everybody happy with how the work programme looks? Any additions or anything that we want to add in? I think
just to make the point, I'm wondering as a board member, though not a councillor, how the intersect between some items works. So this board in the last session looked at school transport arrangements. I've just heard you say that active travel to school is within the purview of another scrutiny board, but I'm just wondering if we were to receive an update on school transport, how would I know as a board member what was happening elsewhere in relation to that?
School transport comes under commissioning in children and young people. It's home to school transport, basically.
That we've considered before. Yeah. What I'm saying is part of any proposal, part of any consideration and scrutiny of that, which sits under this scrutiny board, might be impacted by the discussions on active school travel that happens elsewhere. So in terms of good governance and systems-wide thinking,
we could feed into any recommendations you make. We could feed into the communities and communicate it that way.
Fortunate to actually have help.
Yeah, I think that's if it's like a result, as I chair the community board, and one of the things we actually discussed at the last meeting was if there's anything that this committee wants to discuss that falls outside the remit of this committee or partly in, partly out, it can always be recommended through the chair to the chair of the other scrutiny board to bring such a report. You could do that as a joint session. You could just recommend that another board consider that item, and then really it's within the remit of that to do so. I mean, I chair the communities board, and I can't remember off the top of my head who chairs adults and health board. It's either Councillor Ralston. There's always the opportunity of trying to do either a three board session, which I think I'll be every member of the chamber trying to do that, and that will be a bit chaotic. or simply asking another board recommending that they consider a report.
Okay.
But certainly, I can't speak for any chairs of other committees, but I'm certainly open to working with the chair of this board to bring a joint item if that's what we wanted to do.
Thank you.
Could be something, especially like as regards to like travel to school when we have sorry, I'm going to go home school travel. So in December, we could always then put a recommendation at that point for another board to bring that forward. So yeah, certainly something we can look at. Well, yeah, we are fortunate having slight crossover here as well. So any other comments at all? Yeah, we're happy with that. It's good. That's nice. That's everything then. So I'll bring the meeting to a close. So thank you all for your contributions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're talking about the box after everything. Look.